The story you are about to hear is a wonderful tale of revenge and romance. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to the channel and comment with the location you're watching from. Thank you for listening. Liam Blackwood was a handsome and imposing man, the owner of Blackwood Holdings, a conglomerate of companies focused on civil construction and real estate investments. His presence radiated power, from the impeccable cut of his suits to the steady gaze that seemed to calculate the value of everything around him. Married for years, he had built not only an empire of concrete and steel, but also a family. He had 5 children, but his wife, the light of his life, tragically died in a car accident, leaving him alone to raise the children and manage a void that seemed too vast to fill. There were 2 boys and 3 girls, one of whom, Isabella, was a teenager who had recently become a storm of rebellion, bringing even more challenges to the millionaire's already chaotic daily life. The situation was spiraling out of control. Business meetings were interrupted by calls from school. Multi-million-dollar contracts were signed with his mind, worrying about his youngest son's fever. More than once, Liam had to leave an important presentation to pick up one of his children who had gotten into a fight at school, or to comfort them from nightmares at night. He slept an average of 4 hours a night, always with his cell phone by the bedside waiting for the next emergency. His hair, once perfectly dark, was beginning to show gray strands at the temples. Deep dark circles under his eyes revealed sleepless nights, and his smile, which once lit up any room, had become rare and forced. His mother, Eleanor, a woman of refined features and a firm demeanor, watched her son's decline with a heavy heart. She decided to intervene. She could no longer bear to see her son suffocated by responsibilities, trying to be a father, mother, and CEO all at once. He was reluctant to admit he needed help, to hire a nanny, insisting he could handle everything himself, that it would be a betrayal of his late wife's memory to allow another woman to care for his children. But Eleanor knew her son was on the verge of a breakdown, and so she made the decision to hire an experienced professional on her own. That's how Grace entered the family's life. Young, simple, and humble, she lived in a vibrant, bustling neighborhood where everyone knew each other by name and doors were always open. The daughter of a carpenter with calloused hands and a housewife with a sweet smile, Grace had always had a special affection for children, a gift for calming tears and inventing games. Since she was little, she took care of her nieces and nephews, the neighbors' kids, organized street games, and was known in the neighborhood as the girl who had a way with children. Hardworking and determined, she accepted the opportunity with a hope that shone in her eyes, although she knew the challenge would be immense. Her mother, seeing her pack her simple bag with her few clothes, held her hands and said, "My daughter, you have a huge heart. Take that with you and everything will be all right." Upon arriving at the mansion, a giant of marble and glass that seemed to touch the sky, Grace felt butterflies in her stomach. The automatic gates opened slowly, revealing a garden as large as her entire neighborhood. Ornamental fountains spouted crystal-clear water, and marble sculptures decorated the pathways. She was greeted by Eleanor, who welcomed her with a warm smile but with a look that analyzed her from head to toe. During the interview, the matriarch was direct, describing the battlefield that awaited the new hire. She made it clear that each child had a distinct and complex personality. One was calm and shy, almost a ghost in his own home, spending hours in his room reading books or drawing in silence. Another was a hurricane of energy, incredibly messy, capable of turning an organized room into a war zone in minutes. The middle one was dramatic, turning any small incident into an opera, crying for hours if someone touched her favorite toy. And finally, the teenager Isabella, who was going through a rebellious phase that was giving everyone a headache, sneaking out, talking back, locking herself in her room for days. Eleanor then called the children to meet Grace, one of the nanny candidates. They entered the room in a line like little soldiers inspecting a new recruit. Their reaction was one of calculated indifference, a pact of silence led by the eldest. Isabella just stared at her with disdain, a cutting look that said, "You won't last a day," before retreating to her room, slamming the door hard. The sound echoed through the lavish room. The others followed her example, leaving one by one without a word. Eleanor sighed, a tired sound that revealed months of lost battles, and announced that she had to leave, but assured that her son, Liam, was on his way to conclude the conversation. As Grace waited, sitting on the edge of a sofa that probably cost more than her house, She observed the details around her, expensive paintings on the walls, crystal chandeliers reflecting the afternoon light, marble floors so shiny they looked like mirrors. Everything there breathed luxury, a world completely different from hers. A maid passed by and offered, "Would you like some water, some juice?" The young woman replied, "No, thank you." Then, before leaving, the maid leaned in and said in a low voice, almost a secret, "You're already the 5th nanny candidate to come here this week alone. None of them can stand it for even a minute. These kids are impossible to deal with." One of them lasted only 3 hours before leaving in tears. Another swore she'd never work with children again. "Good luck, miss, you're going to need it." That first day, in fact, turned into a resounding failure. Guided by their older sister, the messy boy and the dramatic girl staged a spectacular fight. Screams, accusations, and rehearsed crying echoed through the house. The boy pushed his sister on purpose, and she fell to the floor, feigning terrible pain, groaning as if she had broken every bone in her body. When Grace approached to talk, trying to mediate the conflict with the calmness she had learned in her neighborhood, crouching down to their level, she felt something cold and sticky run down her head. Isabella, posted at the top of the stairs with a victorious smile, had thrown an entire pitcher of a gooey mixture, which looked like a blend of avocado smoothie and some green jello, on her head. The liquid dripped through her hair, down her face, staining her simple clothes. The children exploded in cruel laughter, pointing at her and celebrating as if they had just won a war. Grace went home dirty, humiliated, but strangely not defeated. On the crowded bus, people looked at her strangely because of the green stain on her clothes and the smell of avocado. She held her head high, thinking of the sad eyes of those children behind all that malice. Liam, upon learning what happened when he got home that night, felt anger and helplessness take over. He grounded the children, his voice, normally calm and imposing, sounding like thunder. "You're all going to drive me crazy. How am I supposed to hire a nanny if you scare them all away? Do you think I like seeing you act like savages? Your mother would be so disappointed in you." At the mention of their mother, Isabella felt a pang in her chest, but she kept her face hard, crossing her arms in defiance. To everyone's surprise, especially Liam's, early the next day, Grace appeared at the mansion's door. Clean, with her hair in a neat bun and the same determination in her eyes. Liam met her at the door, speechless, completely surprised. He apologized, embarrassed by his children's behavior, his voice heavy with shame. She simply smiled and said, "It's okay. I can handle this. I've taken care of difficult children before. And look, deep down, they're not bad. They're just in pain." The conversation flowed naturally, and Liam found himself opening up about his difficulties, about how much he missed his wife, about his fear of failing as a father, about the nights he woke up sweating from nightmares where he lost his children too. He talked about how guilty he felt for not being able to handle everything, for being absent at school meetings, for not knowing how to comb his daughter's hair or talk about teenage problems. He looked at this simple young woman and saw a strength he couldn't find in anyone else, a light that had gone out in his life since his wife had passed. "I think you're the ideal person," he said, finally. He hired her that day. "You can start tomorrow. I'll give you their schedule, the list of what they can eat, the allergies some of them have, school times, practices, therapies, music lessons, you name it. It's a lot, but I trust you." Grace smiled, accepting the challenge with the courage of someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The next morning, Grace began her work. While Liam woke up and got ready, the sound of the shower muffling the silence of the house, Grace was already in the kitchen, reading the paper with the children's entire schedule. It was an immense list. Ballet, swimming, therapy, piano lessons, judo, English. Each child had a different routine, overlapping schedules, locations scattered across the city. The maid, the same one from the previous day, approached with a cup of coffee. "Well, they wake up at 6. At 7 they go to school. Then you get them ready and wait here for the driver. Isabella studies in the afternoon. Keep an eye on her because that girl is more trouble than all the other kids combined. She's run away from home 3 times, did you know? Once she stayed the whole night at a friend's house without telling anyone, nearly scared her father to death." Grace smiled and said, "I can imagine." Grace did her job with almost saintly patience. She had to put up with rudeness, slammed doors, and looks of contempt. There were days she found her things hidden, her phone stuffed in the toilet, her clothes stained with paint. But she didn't give up. Only one of the boys, the shyest one, respected her, watching her from a distance with curiosity. His name was Ethan, he was 8, and sometimes he would leave little drawings under her bedroom door. Drawings of flowers and hearts, as if it were his silent way of saying thank you for staying. When she left work, exhausted, Grace would tell her parents about the children and the messes they made. Her mother, while mending a sock, said, "That poor father having to take care of his business and still look after 5 children alone. It must be very difficult." Her father, sanding a piece of wood, added, "These rich people think money solves everything, but in the end, what a child needs is love and attention." Grace, looking at the ceiling of her simple room, the peeling walls and the old fan spinning slowly, replied, "You're right, Mom, but I'm going to try to change things in that house. I know I can." One day, when all the children were home, a tense silence hanging in the air, Grace called them into the main living room. "Do you guys want to have some real fun?" she asked with a sparkle in her eyes. Isabella, lying on the sofa with her phone in her hands, answered without looking up from the screen, "We don't need you to tell us what to do." Grace walked over to her and, with a gentle movement, took the phone from her hand. "From now on, your phones will be put away. You'll only use them in the afternoon for a few hours, and after that you'll study and play. The kids in my neighborhood play outside. They run, climb trees, play ball in the street until it gets dark. You just lie around on the sofa, and that's so boring. You don't even talk to each other, each in your own little world. This isn't living." The children complained, screamed, got angry. It was difficult, a real rebellion. Isabella tried to get her phone back. The younger ones cried and threw tantrums. But Grace stood firm, putting all the devices in a locked box. To break the ice, she took them to the movies, something they hadn't done in months. They chose an adventure movie, and Grace bought popcorn for everyone, letting them pick the sizes and flavors. Afterwards, they all walked around the mall where she bought ice cream, letting them choose the flavors and toppings. For the first time in a long time, the children laughed together, making jokes about the movie and smearing their faces with ice cream. But Isabella always seemed to be in a bad mood, a wall of indifference around her, keeping her distance and responding only in monosyllables. It was already night when Grace spoke with Liam before leaving. She told him about Isabella's behavior, about how the girl seemed to carry an invisible weight on her shoulders. The father, his gaze lost on the window where the moon was beginning to appear, replied, "This teenage phase is very difficult to handle, and she misses her mother immensely. I found out she was bullied at school because she was the only one whose mother wasn't at a Mother's Day party. The other mothers formed a group, and Isabella sat alone in a corner. She came home crying, and I didn't know what to do, what to say. On top of that, she blames me for my late wife's death. She was gone in a car accident. That day I was driving, and a drunk young man hit our car. I tried to swerve, but I couldn't. I survived, but she didn't. And Isabella was in the back seat. She saw everything." His voice broke, the pain still raw, his eyes welling up. Grace listened in silence, her heart aching for this broken family, feeling a tear run down her own face. She went home and thought to herself, this girl actually needs a different kind of attention. She needs to feel seen, heard, loved. I'm going to try to help her. I'll show her that she deserves to be happy again. Over time, Grace began to attend Isabella's school meetings in place of her father, who was always tied up in business trips. Grace went to the school plays, even if Isabella had a small role as a tree in the background, and she clapped with genuine enthusiasm, shouting, "You were amazing," when the girl walked by. She showed interest in listening to the teenager, in knowing about her favorite music, her deepest fears, her hidden anger. She would stay up late talking with her without judgment, just listening. One day, Isabella, surprised by this genuine attention that not even her own family gave her, asked, "Don't you think I'm being dramatic or annoying? Usually, adults don't listen to us. They think everything is just for show, that we don't have real problems." Grace sat next to her on the messy bed, moving some clothes aside, and said, "I know it's a complicated phase sometimes, but not everything is for show. After all, you have feelings, and those feelings are real and valid. You have every right to be sad, angry, confused. Losing your mother wasn't easy, and no one here is judging you for it." But their true friendship culminated when, one day, while picking Isabella up from school, Grace saw from a distance some students picking on her, pushing her against the wall and laughing cruelly. She heard them call her orphan and weirdo and the girl without a mom. Grace's blood boiled. She approached with firm steps, her eyes shining with restrained fury, and said with a voice that allowed no argument, "Listen up. If you don't stop picking on my girl, I will personally settle the score with each of you. And I will tell your parents everything you do here. I will stand at this school gate every day watching you, got it?" Frightened by this determined woman, the boys quickly backed away, muttering apologies. Isabella laughed, a genuine laugh for the first time in months, feeling a wave of gratitude. "Wow, you scared them off. No one has ever done that for me before." Later, when it was time for the nanny to go home, the girl said, almost in an embarrassed whisper, "Thanks." "Grace, really?" The father watched the scene from his office window, not understanding his daughter's sudden joy, but feeling a glimmer of hope in his chest. Slowly, the children began to adapt to the nanny. But this was because Grace was patient and endured a lot of misbehavior, rebellion, and screaming. Instead of yelling back or giving up like the others, she remained patient, counted to 3, took a deep breath, and sought to treat them where it hurt the most, the loss of their mother. She organized story nights about their mom, asking their father to share good memories, happy moments. She created a photo album for each child, with pictures of their mother they could keep. She taught them that it was normal to miss someone, that it was normal to cry, that their mother would always be in their hearts. But while she was healing the wounds of that family, a love story was about to begin, and it was something very unexpected. Grace then took advantage of a holiday and the fact that the children would be home to invite Liam and the kids to a party in the neighborhood where she lived. It was going to be a party with typical Mexican food, lots of dancing, colors and joy, live music, and people of all ages celebrating together. Liam hesitated at first, worried about how the children would react to an environment so different from the luxury they were used to. But Grace insisted, it will be good for them to see how other people live, how it's possible to be happy without so much money. Liam accepted the invitation. "I'd like to thank you for your patience with my children," he said, his voice full of sincerity. "I was disoriented, lost in a sea of responsibilities, and for me as a man, there are issues I don't know how to discuss with Isabella, girl things, body changes, feelings. But thank God you appeared, and so much has changed over these months. My house has laughter and life again. I don't know how to thank you." With a shy smile, Grace said, "I know it's hard for you to be in charge of everything and be alone. It must be really complicated to carry so much weight. But these children aren't bad. They're just children who are hurting, and I was quite a handful as a child too, so I understand them perfectly." Liam went with the children to the party and personally met Grace's parents, simple and welcoming people who received them with warm hugs and genuine smiles. Grace's mother prepared homemade tamales, tacos and enchiladas, and her father offered fresh drinks, chatting animatedly with Liam about carpentry and construction, finding common ground despite their very different realities. The children soon joined others to play, running barefoot on the dirt road, playing ball, playing hide and seek among the colorful houses. And the teenager Isabella interacted with other girls her age, finally looking like a normal girl, laughing loudly and taking pictures together. The party went on into the night with a lot of joy, the sound of lively music filling the air. Party lights strung between the houses, creating a magical atmosphere. It was when a more upbeat song played and everyone danced. Grace called out to Liam, "Come dance with us. Don't be shy." "I'm terrible at dancing," he said, laughing self-consciously and scratching the back of his neck. "I've never been good at it," my wife always complained. "It doesn't matter. No one's judging here," she replied, pulling him by the hand with force and determination. In the first few steps he was shy and clumsy, stepping on his own feet and hers, but he let himself be carried away by the contagious joy of the environment, by the engaging rhythm of the Mexican music. Suddenly he looked around, worried. "Where are the boys? And Isabella?" Grace smiled. "They went to the inflatable pool my dad set up in the backyard, can you believe it? But don't worry, my parents are watching them. And Isabella is sitting with her friends eating churros and gossiping. It's all good." During the dance, one of Grace's aunts, sensing the chemistry between the two, decided to give them a little push and put on a slow, romantic song. Grace and Liam danced together for the first time for real, their bodies closer. And when they looked into each other's eyes, Liam seeing his reflection in her pupils, something different hung in the air, an electricity that silenced the noise of the party around them, as if the world had stopped spinning in that moment. The party continued late into the night when Liam finally said, checking his watch and seeing it was past 2 in the morning, "Kids, time to go home." "It's very late." The little ones protested in chorus, "Oh no! We want to stay a little longer. Please, Dad, let us. We never have fun like this." Grace's mother laughed, saying, "How about you spend the night here? I have some new mattresses a relative gave me. You can sleep in the living room. Our living room is spacious and well ventilated. It would be an honor to have you." Liam hesitated, thinking of the empty mansion waiting for them, but seeing the genuine joy on his children's faces, something he hadn't seen in a long time, he accepted emotionally. "All right, we'll stay. Thank you for the hospitality." After everyone was settled on the mattresses in the living room, light blankets over them, and the children's breathing growing slower and deeper as the neighborhood sank into silence, Grace and Liam stayed on the front porch, under the yellowish light of a streetlight that flickered now and then. Between laughs and relaxed conversations about childhood, old dreams and future plans, the mood became more intimate. Suddenly Liam moved closer, and with delicacy touched Grace's face, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. She felt her heart beat faster, her legs growing weak. And there in that quiet early morning, while the children slept and the world seemed to have stopped just for them, the two lost themselves in a soft and passionate kiss, a kiss that sealed something new and frightening. After the kiss on the porch, Grace felt her heart race, but fear washed over her like a cold wave. Reality hit her like a bucket of ice water. He was her boss, a powerful millionaire, owner of an empire, and she was just the nanny, a simple girl from the neighborhood who had barely finished high school. What could he possibly want with her besides a fleeting affair? She pulled away quickly, murmuring with a trembling voice, "I'd better get to sleep. Good night." Liam, surprised by her abrupt reaction, stood there watching her disappear down the dark hallway. He tried to convince himself that the kiss had just been an impulse, born from the loneliness he'd felt since losing his wife and the magical moment of the party. But something inside him knew otherwise, knew that kiss meant so much more. In the following days, the tension was palpable in the mansion's air. Grace tried to act natural, focusing on the children and her daily tasks. But the exchanged glances between her and Liam betrayed the growing feeling they both tried to hide. He would watch her discreetly as she played with the boys, admiring her patience and dedication. She could feel his gaze on her and had to fight not to blush. The second kiss happened unexpectedly. After a long and exhausting day with the children, where everything that could go wrong did, Liam offered her a ride to her street, saying the driver was off and he would take her himself. The drive was silent, but it was a silence filled with unsaid words, furtive glances, hands that almost touched on the gear shift. The sexual tension was almost palpable inside the luxury car. When the car stopped in front of her simple house, a stark contrast to the imported vehicle, Grace unbuckled her seatbelt, ready to get out and end that sweet torture. But Liam gently held her arm, his warm fingers on her skin. "Wait," he murmured, his gaze fixed on hers, intense and vulnerable. "I can't pretend nothing is happening anymore. I think about you all the time. I love you, Grace, and I know it's crazy. I know we're from different worlds, but I can't deny what I feel." Her heart nearly leaped out of her chest before he gently pulled her in for a deep, sincere kiss, one that sealed the silent promise their glances had been making for days. She got out of the car radiant, her face lit up by a smile she couldn't hide floating to her front door. But it wouldn't all be smooth sailing. A few days later, while Grace was playing with the children in the sunny garden, the mansion's doorbell rang, a strident sound that shattered the harmony of the perfect afternoon. The maid went to answer, and seconds later announced in a strange voice, "Mr. Blackwood, you have a visitor." He appeared in the living room and came face to face with a figure from the past, Caroline Miller, as elegant as ever, wearing a sophisticated navy blue dress that hugged her body perfectly, expensive jewelry shining on her neck and wrists, and carrying a confident smile on her red-painted lips. She was a family friend from childhood. Caroline had always had a veiled interest in Liam, and now that he was widowed and vulnerable, she was determined to win him over at any cost. And she wouldn't let an insignificant nanny get in her way. "Caroline," Liam said, surprised but polite as always, "what are you doing here? It's been a while." She walked toward him with smooth, calculated steps, hugging him a little too intimately, pressing her body against his and letting her expensive perfume envelop him. "I missed you, Liam. It's been so long since we've seen each other. I decided to visit and see how you're coping with everything. After all, it's not easy taking care of 5 children alone. It must be exhausting," she said with a malicious look that didn't reach her cold eyes. As they talked, Grace watched from a distance through the window, feeling a growing discomfort settle in her stomach. It was clear that Caroline was there with ulterior motives, the way she touched his arm, the way she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes. Caroline soon noticed Grace's presence and, with a forced, condescending smile, approached like a predator closing in on its prey. "And you must be the nanny, right?" she said in a slightly patronizing tone, looking Grace up and down with barely disguised contempt. Grace maintained her posture, lifting her chin, and replied calmly, "Yes, I'm Grace." Caroline smiled, but her eyes held a look of pure challenge. "It must be complicated taking care of so many difficult children. I hope you're managing. After all, I've heard that several nannies have passed through here before you," she said, leaving a poisonous insinuation in the air that Grace was no better than the others. From that day on, Grace realized her presence in that house would no longer go unnoticed. Caroline was willing to do anything to push her away from Liam and the children's lives, and the war was just beginning. The following days were marked by a cold war, a mix of tension and suspicion. Caroline began showing up at the mansion frequently, always with a different excuse. She brought sweets for the children, offered help with paperwork, invited Liam to business dinners. Grace felt the weight of Caroline's eyes watching her every move, every interaction with Liam, but she tried to focus on the children and her work, ignoring the rival's menacing presence. However, the situation got out of control. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, when everything seemed harmonious and the children were playing happily in the yard, Grace decided to prepare a healthy juice for the little ones, a mix of fruits they loved after playing outside. She was always mindful of dietary restrictions, especially with little Mason, only 5 years old, who had a severe peanut allergy that could be fatal. She organized everything with meticulous care, washing the fruits, cutting them into pieces and leaving the juice in the kitchen while she quickly went to the bathroom. It was in this brief moment of absence that Caroline Miller struck like a snake waiting for the right moment to attack. Taking advantage of Grace's absence and making sure no one was looking, she discreetly took a handful of ground peanuts she had found in the snack cabinet and mixed it well into the juice pitcher, stirring with a spoon and ensuring no one would notice the change in color or texture. Her heart beat fast, but she kept her face calm, a satisfied smile on her lips. Minutes later, Grace returned and served the colorful glasses to the children, suspecting nothing. The kids were excited, drinking the juice and playing, laughing loudly and telling stories, but it wasn't long before Mason started to feel sick. His little face turned red and swelled up quickly, his eyes watered, and he brought his small hands to his neck, trying to breathe, making a high-pitched, frightening sound that cut through the air like a knife. "Oh my God, Mason!" Grace screamed in panic, not knowing what to do, her world collapsing in seconds. Caroline, seeing the scene unfold exactly as planned, approached quickly and said with false calm and concern, "He's choking. We have to get him to the hospital now, quick." Without a second thought, Caroline scooped the boy into her arms and ran to the car, with a desperate Grace following, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. At the hospital, Mason received first aid just in time, an epinephrine shot that saved his life. And he was out of danger after a few tense hours in the emergency room. Grace, however, felt terrible, guilt gnawing at her from the inside, trying to understand how it had happened when she had been so careful. When they returned to the mansion, as dusk fell, Liam was waiting in the living room, anxious and pale, pacing back and forth. With Mason asleep in his arms after the medication, he looked directly at Grace with an unreadable expression. Before she could say anything, Caroline stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Liam's shoulder. "It was horrible, Liam." The boy drank the juice and immediately had an allergic reaction. It was terrifying to see his little face turning purple. Good thing I was nearby to help get him to the hospital in time, she said, casting a veiled look of disapproval at Grace, as if she were guilty of gross negligence. With a heavy heart and tears burning her eyes, Grace tried to explain, "Liam, I don't know how this happened. I was extremely careful with everything. I checked the ingredients 3 times. I would never put anything in there that could harm Mason. You know how much I love these children." Liam took a deep breath, looking at his sleeping son in his arms, so small and fragile. "Grace, I'm going to put Mason to bed and then we'll talk," he said, leaving the room without a clear expression, leaving a heavy silence behind. Later, when he came back down the stairs slowly, he seemed calmer, but tired. "Look, accidents happen. I know you're careful, but maybe you were distracted today. The important thing is that Mason was saved in time thanks to Caroline. But please pay more attention next time, okay? The children depend on you," he said with a gentle smile, trying to ease the tension but still distant. Grace, still shaken and feeling she had disappointed the man she loved, answered softly, "I will, I promise. It will never happen again." But peace was far from returning, and Grace felt that Caroline was plotting something bigger. The next day, while Grace played with the children in the sunny garden, trying to forget the trauma of the previous day, Caroline devised another cruel plan. She saw that Grace had put the family dog, a golden retriever named Rex, in his kennel in the backyard and had securely latched the gate. Seizing a moment of distraction when Grace went inside to get water, Caroline discreetly unlatched the kennel and opened the main gate that led to the busy street, leaving it wide open. Minutes later, the dog shot out, running towards the dangerous street, barking happily, unaware of the danger. The children began to scream and cry, scared and desperate. Rex ran away. "He's running far away! A car is going to hit him," one of the girls shouted in panic. Grace ran to the front of the house, panic rising and her legs nearly giving out, seeing the beloved dog running towards the cars. The younger children were in tears as she tried to call the dog back, shouting his name. Liam appeared at the gate coming from his office, trying to understand all the commotion. "But I swear I closed his kennel gate. I always check it twice," Grace said, almost crying, her voice desperate. Caroline appeared behind them, feigning perfect concern. "Poor Grace, it seems you've been so distracted lately. First Mason, now Rex. Are you okay?" she murmured in a low tone, just enough for Grace to hear, a cruel smile on her lips. Liam managed to catch the dog with the help of a neighbor who saw him running, but he started to become suspicious of Grace's successive mistakes, a shadow of doubt planted in his mind. And so, without anyone knowing the truth, Caroline continued to sabotage Grace, determined to drive her away from Liam and the children at any cost, regardless of the consequences. But the worst part, the incident that made Liam argue seriously with Grace, was when Caroline put her cruelest and most calculated plan into action. That morning during breakfast, Caroline announced casually while buttering a piece of toast, "Well, my vacation is almost over. I'll be back to my routine in New York soon. But I wanted to enjoy these last few days with you all. Especially with you, Liam," she said, flashing a subtle smile and glancing at Grace out of the corner of her eye with superiority. Liam smiled politely, but his gaze seemed lost in confused thoughts. Grace, in the background organizing the children's breakfast, listened to the conversation without saying a word, just watching with a knot in her stomach. It was in this tense atmosphere that Caroline devised her riskiest and most dangerous plan. The next day, a rainy Thursday, while Grace took the younger boys to the mall's indoor playground so they could play despite the bad weather, Caroline stayed at the mansion with Isabella, who was grounded for not doing her schoolwork for the 3rd time in a row. Caroline saw the perfect opportunity for her macabre plan. She went to Isabella's room, bringing a glass of juice and feigning maternal sympathy. "You know, Izzy, I know how boring it is to be cooped up in here while everyone else is out having fun. Life is too short to waste like this. Why don't you go out for a bit and enjoy yourself?" she whispered with the voice of a serpent. Isabella looked at her, suspicious of the sudden kindness. "I can't, my dad will get mad at me again, and Grace too." Caroline then smiled, playing her final card with malice. "Don't worry, I'll help you. In fact, I'll cover for you if anyone asks. How about going to the pool to catch some sun? Go on down and wait for me, and I'll take you wherever you want later. How about the mall? We can buy that outfit you wanted," she said with a fake smile. The teenager hesitated, the desire for freedom fighting with her sense of duty, but she gave in to temptation after a few minutes. Caroline led Isabella to the pool area, discreetly removed the safety cover that was supposed to be stretched over the water at all times for safety, and left Isabella there alone, near the slippery edge. "I'm just going to get my car keys and my purse. Wait here for a few minutes, okay?" Caroline said before walking away, smiling behind her facade, her plan unfolding perfectly. Alone and bored, Isabella sat near the wet edge, playing with the cold water with her toes. Suddenly she felt a strong, calculated push on her back, a force that threw her completely off balance. Not knowing how to swim well and panicking, she fell into the deep end of the pool and began to struggle desperately, swallowing water, her screams muffled by the water engulfing her. Her arms flailed frantically at the surface, trying to grab onto something, anything. Grace, who was returning from the park with the boys and was still at the gate closing the van, heard the muffled, desperate screams coming from the back. "Help! Somebody help me!" Without a second thought, leaving the boys in the van, she ran to the backyard and saw Isabella drowning, her head disappearing under the water. She threw herself into the pool fully clothed, the icy water cutting her skin, and with superhuman effort, managed to pull the heavy teenager to the edge. Isabella coughed hard, crying with fear, shivering violently. At that moment, Liam came running from the house, alarmed by the noise and the children's screams. Seeing his daughter wet, trembling, pale, and almost lifeless in Grace's arms, his expression changed from concern to pure fury. "What happened here?" he yelled, his voice echoing through the garden. Grace, still panting and coughing up water, replied, "We were at the mall. When I got here, I heard screams and saw Isabella drowning in the pool. I don't know how she got out of her room." Caroline came running from the house, feigning perfect shock and surprise, even putting a hand to her mouth dramatically. "I saw everything from the window, Liam. Grace left Isabella alone here before she left with the boys. I thought she was watching Izzy. I thought it was safe to leave them alone for a minute. I never imagined this would happen." Liam was silent for a second that felt like an eternity, his face a mask of disappointment and anger. "You left my daughter alone by the pool and left with the other boys. How could you be so irresponsible?" he asked in a cold voice, staring at Grace with eyes that no longer recognized the woman he loved. She felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. "Liam, it wasn't like that. She was grounded in her room. I would never take her near the pool alone. Liam cut her off, his voice as cold as ice. "Enough, Grace. I trusted you with the most precious thing I have, and now this almost ends in tragedy. I can't risk my children's lives for anything in this world. I think it's best you take some time off. I need to think about all of this, about whether you're really the right person to take care of them." His words were like a punch to the gut. Grace left the mansion with a broken heart, drenched, humiliated, not understanding how everything had gone so wrong, how the man who claimed to love her could so easily believe the lies. Caroline watched it all from the upper balcony, holding a glass of red wine, savoring her cruel victory, a satisfied smile on her wicked face. However, when Isabella finally woke up a few hours later, fully recovered from the traumatic scare but still shaken, she looked for her father and said, "Where's Grace? And where's Caroline?" Her father, still worried and confused, sitting on the edge of her bed, replied with a tired voice, "Caroline went home. And as for Grace, well, after what happened today, I think I'm going to have to fire her. I can't take any risks." "No, Dad. Why, she saved me," Isabella protested, sitting up quickly in bed, her eyes wide. "It's decided. I'm sorry, but I have to protect you," he replied, firm but with a heavy heart. Then Isabella told him everything, the words tumbling out fast and desperate. "Dad, you have to listen to me. It was Caroline's fault, not Grace's. She told me to leave my room, that I could go wherever I wanted, that she would cover for me and we'd go to the mall later. She told me to wait for her near the pool. Then I felt someone kick me hard into the water, but when I managed to look back, I didn't see anyone. The person was already gone. It had to be her who tried to kill me, Dad. She wanted to drown me." Liam listened to his daughter's detailed account, and the pieces finally began to fit together in his mind, like a dark puzzle. He thought for a few minutes in silence and said, "You know, now that I think about it, after she came to this house for a visit, things started to get very strange. All these accidents began when she showed up." The girl then said with sincere tears in her eyes, Dad, Grace would never hurt us. She truly loves us. I was so annoying at the beginning. So mean to her, I threw that disgusting stuff on her. And she still put up with me, defended me from those idiots at school, came to my plays. Bring her back, ask her for forgiveness. I already see her as a mother, and I don't want her to leave our lives. Determined and feeling the weight of his guilt, the father said, "Daughter, tomorrow morning Dad will take care of this, okay? I'll bring Grace back and I'll settle the score with Caroline." After going to Grace's house in the colorful neighborhood the next morning, he called out, knocking on the worn wooden door. But no one was home. An elderly neighbor, watering his plants, informed him they went to a relative's birthday in the countryside and won't be back until tomorrow afternoon. Liam thanked him politely and returned home, anxiety and regret eating at him from the inside, counting the hours. He parked the car in front of the mansion, his mind still in turmoil from Isabella's confession and the realization of how he had been manipulated. He felt terrible, a complete fool for being unfair to Grace, for believing Caroline's lies, for hurting the woman he loved and who had saved his daughter. As he got out of the car, he saw Caroline standing at the front door, leaning against a pillar, impeccably dressed in an emerald green dress and wearing a fake smile on her painted lips. "Liam, darling, so good to see you. I was worried after everything that happened yesterday and decided to stop by to see how things are if Isabella is okay," she said, trying to sound sweet and maternal, but the falseness was obvious. But Liam, with the most serious expression she had ever seen, did not match her tone. He crossed his arms and looked directly into her cold eyes. "Worried?" he repeated with heavy sarcasm. "You know, Caroline, something isn't adding up in this whole story. In fact, a lot of things don't add up." Caroline, still trying to maintain her composure, but feeling the ground shifting beneath her feet, forced a nervous smile. "What are you talking about, Liam?" she asked, feigning innocent confusion. Liam took a step closer, invading her personal space, his voice low but dangerous. "Isabella told me everything. She said you encouraged her to leave her room, promised to take her to the mall and left her alone by the pool without supervision. More than that, she felt someone push her into the water. It was you who tried to drown my daughter. Damn it, Caroline, we were childhood friends. How could you do this?" Caroline's face turned as pale as paper, the blood draining from her cheeks. But she quickly tried to recompose herself, laughing nervously. "Liam, you can't possibly believe everything a rebellious, troubled teenager says. You yourself said she's difficult. That girl is rude, rebellious, a fake, a liar. She's probably making all this up for attention." But Liam wasn't fooled anymore. "Don't play innocent, Caroline, and don't talk about my daughter like that. Don't you dare! And it's not just Isabella's word either. The gardener, Mr. Henderson, saw you with her near the pool before the accident. He told me this morning that he saw you taking the safety cover off the pool and leaving her there alone before you went inside. And there's more. The story about Mason's juice that caused the allergic reaction. The maid told me you were alone in the kitchen shortly before the incident. I wonder if you had a hand in that too. And the dog that ran away. You were at the house that day too." Caroline's eyes widened, realizing she was cornered finally with no mask to wear. I don't know what you're talking about." "You're crazy." Liam took another step, his imposing height intimidating her. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You put me at risk. You put my children's lives at risk, and you tried to destroy someone who only brought happiness and peace to my home for the first time in years. You manipulated everything, sabotaged Grace, nearly killed my daughter out of sick jealousy. Our friendship, if there was any left, ends here and now. And I will personally make sure you never come near my family again. If you show up here again, I'll call the police and sue you for attempted murder. Now get in your car, get off my property, and get on with your life. Goodbye, Caroline. May God have mercy on you." The next day, as the sun rose bringing new hope, Liam called Grace as soon as he heard she was back, his voice full of regret and vulnerability. "Grace, please, I need to talk to you. The boy, Isabella, they all miss you so much. Actually, I miss you. Can we talk? I need to explain everything." Grace took a deep breath, fighting back tears before responding with dignity. "I don't run from problems, Liam. I never have. We can talk." When they met in the mansion's garden, where it had all begun months ago, Liam didn't hesitate. He approached her from behind as she looked at the flowers and hugged her with a desperate tenderness, his face buried in her hair. "I know everything now. It was Caroline who did everything, all the sabotage, all the accidents. She confessed when I confronted her. Forgive me for doubting you. I think I was a blind fool. Forgive me for not defending you, for believing her lies instead of trusting my heart. Grace, feeling the warmth of his embrace and his sincere remorse, turned to face him and replied with tears streaming down her face. No, you weren't a fool. You were just a protective father who wanted to protect the children he loves above all else. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would have done the same. Smiling through tear-filled eyes, Liam confessed, the house without you became chaos again, but worse, it became a place of mourning. The boys ask about you every day. Isabella cries in her room. I really want you to come back, not just as a nanny, but as part of our family. For the boys, and especially for me, because I love you. What do you think? Grace's eyes filled with tears of pure joy. I missed you all so much too, so much. I missed the laughter, the messes, even the tantrums. I missed being loved. And so Grace returned to the house that very day. The children hugged her with indescribable joy, laughing and crying at the same time, jumping around her as if she were a hero who had returned from war. Even the dog Rex barked happily and jumped on her. Seizing the perfect moment, with the whole family gathered, Liam knelt before her with a passionate and emotional smile, taking a small box from his pocket. Grace, will you stay here forever? Marry me. I can also give your parents a new, comfortable house so they can be close to us. Grace smiled, moved to her soul, but said, my parents would never want to leave that neighborhood, that's for sure. That's their world and they're happy there. But I really want to stay with you all forever. She paused emotionally, holding his hands, and added, you know, my dream has always been to get married on the beach, barefoot in the sand, with the sound of the waves. Liam wasted no time and spared no expense. He made Grace's dream come true exactly as she had always imagined. And the wedding took place on a beautiful, idyllic beach, with the sound of the sea accompanying the most important I do of their lives, the children running barefoot in the sand, white flowers decorating everything, and Grace's parents present and crying with happiness. The couple began to live together, falling more in love each day, rediscovering that love every day. The children were radiant and finally at peace with the new mother that fate, patience, and true love had given them. And sometime later, their happiness became even more complete when Grace became pregnant with a beautiful baby girl, completing the family perfectly and bringing even more love to that house that was once just luxury and loneliness, but now overflowed with love, laughter, and hope for the future.